He's an outdoors guy, loved fishing, hunting, was always around family.
A Marco Island man's fate is forever changed after confusion breaks out over who should.
You just wouldn't think someone like that could happen.
Do you think that it was right to let this patient wait for an hour to be transported to somewhere he could be helped?
Tonight, the NBC2 investigators press for answers.
Could a billing battle over who should transport patients to the hospital be to blame for Paul Anderson's death?
Karla Ray asking tough questions tonight, and she's in the studio with this exclusive investigation.
Well, last month we told you Collier County EMS was going to stop transporting patients between facilities owned by Naples Community Hospital. That's because NCH hadn't paid a bill worth more than $170,000. Those transfers stopped October 1st, and just 2 days later, a man lost his life.
Now a captain, as a boy, David Anderson learned how to fish from his grandpa.
I'm lucky growing up next to him, you know, whenever there was a spot on one of his fishing trips or anything like that, I was invited.
When 80-year-old Paul Anderson wasn't on the water, he was with his family, 5 kids and 14 grandkids.
Just enjoyed living and traveling.
Last Sunday morning, Paul felt dizzy. A friend took him to the Marco Island Urgent Care Center, owned by Naples Community Health. It was 12 minutes before 9 a.m., and he needed help.
Yeah, hi, this is Marco Healthcare on Marco Island, Florida, and I have a patient that needs to be transported right away to the main hospital.
NBC2 obtained 911 calls from that morning and dozens of radio transmissions between Collier Dispatch and the county's emergency medical services, who were originally called to respond.
Is this an emergency or non-emergent transport?
No, emergency. Definite.
But EMS was called off.
Go ahead and release my rescue 50 from back home at Marco Island, Urgent Care Center. NCH transfer will take it.
EMS Chief Walter Kopka says he was talking to NCH's Director of Transport within minutes of the first 911 call. He was told the healthcare group would transfer Anderson to the downtown Naples hospital, as they are supposed to based on the county's policy.
NCH Transport is certified, licensed to take transports from that facility. And they should be the primary mode of transports from that facility.
Kopka says that conversation happened around 9 a.m. 17 minutes later, a nurse from the facility placed a second 911 call, pleading for help.
Collier County 911. Hi, Marco Urgent Care. We called before. We need a rig over here.
Sources tell us the NCH ambulance was here the entire time that morning. Problem is, the paramedic scheduled to run it wasn't supposed to work until 9 a.m.
But we obtained reports from the Marco Island Fire Department, which also responded that day, in which a witness states NCH's paramedic didn't show up until 9:22 and told him to, quote, back off or she would not transport his friend.
Playing Monday night quarterback that they didn't transfer the patient at a certain time. I didn't know that at that time.
By then, EMS was on scene to assist, but it wasn't until 9:39, 9 minutes short of an hour from the first call for help, that Anderson was on his way to the hospital.
NCH transport took off with that patient on upon our arrival. We had no patient contact.
You just wouldn't think someone like that could happen.
Doctors told Anderson's family it was too late to operate. He suffered a stroke and passed away the next day.
We reached out to NCH numerous times. They would not answer any questions about this specific incident.
So, Karla, I got to ask, if this urgent care facility has been around the whole time, why wasn't somebody there to answer this call or to run the ambulance until 9 a.m.?
Right. Well, sources tell me NCH changed their policy the Monday after this happened. They supposedly now start their interfacility ambulance service at 8 a.m. to coincide with the time that the urgent care facility opens. But of course, NCH would not confirm that for us.
All right. Thanks, Karla. And we'll continue to follow this developing story for our viewers.
He dressed the part for nearly 6 years.
This just goes back to old school fraud.
But Cape Coral Police Chief Jay Murphy says one of his officers was pretending to be someone he wasn't.
Is it embarrassing that this one slipped by?
Yeah, it's always, you always hope to do better.
During a frantic hiring period in 2005, Cape Coral's police department grew by about 100 officers. One of the men hired, Stephen Chase.
Pretty much everything from here down to here was shattered.
NBC2 met Chase back in 2009 after he was involved in a serious crash while on patrol. While recovering, he was promoted to detective.
We went through 1,100 to 1,200 applicants in 18 months. We missed this one.
What Cape Police missed, another agency caught. Stephen Chase applied to work for the Lee County Sheriff's Office this August. While reviewing his education records, they discovered the date on his GED didn't physically line up with the rest of the document.
If you called up and just asked, is this GED issued to Stephen Chase, they would say yes. If you didn't ask them the date of birth, you would never know the difference.
The Florida Department of Law Enforcement launched an internal investigation. It found the GED was issued to a man by the same name as Chase with a different Social Security number.
Chase was confronted by internal affairs investigators, and he admitted everything. He ultimately resigned, and even though he did something that's technically illegal, he was never charged with any crime.
He didn't gain anything where someone else was victimized.
Well, the Cape Coral residents paid his salary for 6 years.
But he also provided a service, and he provided a pretty decent service.
We stopped at Chase's home not once, but twice in an effort to get his side of the story. He eventually declined an interview.
He suffers the embarrassment and the fact that he will never be able to do what he always wanted to be, and that's a police officer.
The end of what his former colleagues say was his lifelong dream. Something the chief says is punishment enough.
Back there's where I was cooking.
The pans in his kitchen still hanging from the ceiling, ingredients still on the counter. But nothing looks the same at Mangrove Cafe through the eyes of cook Billy McCauley.
It's quite devastating. You know, I've worked here 14 years. So you do 14 years somewhere.
Before this destruction, Monday was set to be just another day at work for him. He had just started prepping for the day as the propane tank was being filled behind the restaurant. The unthinkable happened.
I looked up and noticed that gas was coming in, and you could see it, you could hear it, and you could smell it coming in like a big cloud rolling like from the bottom up, coming through the door.
Food already cooking in the kitchen. Billy booked it.
All your senses at once. All of a sudden you see the cloud, you smell it, and you hear whoosh, and it was coming hard and fast.
But a split second was all it took.
It took me 2 steps to get to the hallway. I took 3 steps in the hallway, and it blew.
Surveillance video from outside the restaurant shows just how quickly the fireball ripped through the building. You can see Billy running out the side, forced by the flames.
And when it hit me, it blew me like this, forward. I burnt my back, my arms, bald spot in my head.
Despite injuries through the dust and damage, seeing all this, he feels lucky. Knows he's lucky by comparison.
And my concern is those boys up in Tampa, they're burned up. I mean, I'm walking around today, you know, those boys in Tampa ain't, so.
Whoops. Coffee, a crossword puzzle.
I can see that.
And a table for 3. Ordinary to anyone else, but for these men,
there aren't words. There are no words.
2 years ago, a trip to Starbucks forged a friendship between now 85-year-old Tom Burke and 23-year-old Brad Raub. They worked on puzzles, talked about family, including the son Burke hadn't seen for 60 years.
Not since he was 3 weeks old.
For some reason, when he said it that day, I'll see him in the next world, I wasn't happy with that.
Raub went to his computer and typed in a search for Kent Rashawn Burke, which returned just one result.
Brad Raub wants to be friends.
My name is Brad from Naples, Florida. I'm a friend of Tom Burke, and I'm trying to help him locate his son.
I had no idea what he was going to do.
What he did, create a Father's Day that almost wasn't.
We are twins, born 25 years apart.
Today, they're first together in 60. Tom and Kent Burke, father and son, met just last night, thanks to a stranger at the coffee shop.
There's no way that I can say what I think about this fabulous human being over here other than I love him.
It has done as much for me connecting the two of them again as it has for them to be connected with each other again after 60 years.
A connection no amount of time can break of love.
Well, of course, I love him.
And he loves you.
In Collier County, Karla Ray, NBC2.
Karla, this is one fish story that's hard to believe.
Yeah, it's incredible, and she can laugh about it today, but it was a very scary moment for Joanne Lorick yesterday. She and her friends like to get out here on the water like many of us do every chance they get, and just about every weekend they see those dolphins out swimming. They come right up next to their boat, but this weekend one got a little too close for comfort. It actually tried to hitch a ride inside their boat.
For me, it was horrifying. It was like, this is not really happening.
A day on the Marco River and a show put on by dolphins. This weekend was set to be just like any other for Joanne Lorick and her friends Richard and Patty Johnston.
I mean, you don't think to be afraid of dolphins, do you? I mean, you know, it was very cool. We were all looking over the side.
But then it wasn't.
I'm looking out this way and it came out right here. There was no, I thought, that dolphin's just not going to be in water when this is all over.
Bam, in a split second.
It pinned my foot underneath.
This bottlenose dolphin filled up the Johnston's boat, weighing an estimated 600 pounds, landing right on top of Lorick.
I'm yelling, my leg is broken, my leg is broken. Patty's yelling, Richard, get this dolphin off the boat!
Isles of Capri Fire Lieutenant Keith Perry couldn't believe the call for help.
There was a boat with a possible broken leg or leg injury, they weren't sure, and a dolphin aboard the vessel, which was pretty unusual.
Using a rescue board meant for spinal injury patients, it took 10 men to pry the giant animal off the boat and back into the water.
He kind of just laid still and let us do our thing. I think he knew that he was stuck, he'd made a mistake, and we were helping him and not out to harm him in any way, and just trying to get him back into his surroundings.
Making it out with just a few cuts, the dolphin's damage was just a few scrapes on the boat and bandages on Lorick's ankle.
The boat survived, the people survived.
Feeling lucky to have lived through a once-in-a-lifetime encounter with the wild and able to get back on the water where it happened so quickly.
We always feel blessed being down here. It's like you died and went to heaven, but seriously, I'm just, yeah, I feel very, very, very fortunate.
Yeah, very lucky that nobody was hurt and very minimal damage to the boat. And Perry actually tells me that he's checking in with agencies like SeaWorld to see if there's any sort of equipment that they can purchase in case this should ever happen again. We're live in Collier County. Karla Ray, NBC2.
Bottles and bottles of prescription drugs.
This is my life now. I never liked pills before, but I have to have them now.
The man these drugs are prescribed to doesn't want to show his face, living with cancer and severe back pain, and for the past month, limited pain meds after he says some were stolen.
My pills cost almost $300, and that's a felony.
In the past year, the Lee County Sheriff's Office has taken more than 150 reports of pill thefts. Some of the most popular, oxycodone and Xanax.
It's dangerous and it's real, and so we try to work through public awareness like this, communicating with viewers and listeners and readers, and then also through enforcement efforts.
Sheriff Mike Scott says the prescription drug abuse epidemic has gotten so bad, some people are faking robberies, burglaries, and thefts just to get more pills.
Certainly there are going to be, with any crime and with any offense, there are going to be people that try to figure out a way to get around the system.
Again, we're wasting our time and we're wasting our resources. All these were auto burglaries.
Captain Lisa Barnes with Cape Coral PD says the problem is the same across the river. They've taken nearly 100 reports for stolen pills in the past year. But when it comes time for the victim to step up with details,
either we don't hear from them again, they don't return our phone calls, we can't get statements, or they just decide that they don't want to pursue it anymore.
The NBC2 investigators dug up a number of examples. In March, a victim reported his sleeping pills, Xanax and Oxys, stolen from his car. But an anonymous tipster told Cape PD he, quote, had a pill problem, and in order to get more, he had to file a police report. Then, in April, a different victim claimed his meds were taken from the trunk of his car. But when police tried to follow up, they couldn't reach him. Writing on the report, quote, he has most likely replaced them because this report was filed. And in August, 2 men claimed to have been held at gunpoint and forced to lie on the ground over scripts. Problem is, it was raining that day, and the alleged victims had on dry clothes.
We had a hard time even interviewing our victims because they were so lethargic, because they had been, they were under the influence.
Filing a false report is a misdemeanor offense, but Barnes says the department hasn't arrested any of the alleged victims.
Do you feel like by allowing them to file reports, it's sort of adding to the problem?
We're caught in sort of in a quandary here, because if you come into me and say, I've had my pills stolen, they were in the front seat of my car and they're gone, initially, how do I prove you didn't?